Hello, everyone. Welcome to MindBody TV. I'm Dr. Kim Duramo. I have a special guest today I'll introduce in a moment. I am really excited for everyone who's tuning in live. If you're tuning in to the recording or the podcast, we'd love to hear from you as well. You can type in who you are, where you're from, or any aha moments that come up during the broadcast. For those of you who don't know me, I am a physician sharing about mind-body medicine for healing of like all different kinds of diseases, anxiety, depression, pain. I've really seen the power that can happen physically when we shift our consciousness. And I've brought really potent topics every week for years now. And today we have, I think, one of the most powerful topics that maybe we've really hit on, because depression is something that can be really taboo and really scary. And I don't think it's something that a lot of people are really expressive with, are really getting to the bottom of, or really sharing, other than just, we make it wrong, we medicate it, we suppress it at all costs. And that actually makes the problem worse. So today's broadcast, which is about, is depression a message that it's time for a change, could be a little bit outside the box for how a lot of people think. Like, what? You mean it's not just this bad thing I have to get rid of? I actually might receive something here. It might actually be my system's way of giving me some insight that I'm going in the wrong direction. We have been running the Mind-Body Solution for Anxiety and Depression. We just started 2 weeks ago. We have 2 more weeks of that. And I feel really inspired about sort of connecting with this topic, connecting with so many people who have been in depression and been really scared to look at it or to talk about it or to see what the bigger picture could be. So I have none other than my friend, healer Tyler Wheelock, who is a really, really good friend of mine here in Durango and does amazing, amazing work, who has a past history of experiencing depression, but allowing it to create a major awakening in his life. And I know that Tyler just has so much compassion and authenticity with who he is, the work he does, and how he shares, that he would be the perfect person to come on to assist me with this topic. He's also one of my go-to people for when I'm depressed or I'm kind of stuck and like the energy isn't moving or overwhelmed in my life or just not clear. And I think the work he does is absolutely mind-blowing. So I'm really excited to share him with you. So welcome, Tyler.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim, for having me.
So we have people here. Thank you guys for commenting from New Jersey, from Michigan, England, Montreal, Salt Lake City, South Africa, Virginia, San Diego, Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, BC, and I'm part of the anxiety and depression program. Awesome. Kirsty's so interested regarding medicating it. I've been crying up and down a lot the last few days. Instead of running to the GP for medication, I've been seeing it as something big I obviously need to release. Oh, way to go. It's and it's not like, oh, you should just go it alone. Don't go with medication. I would never say that. Do whatever is fluid for you. And yeah, it's always really helpful to first look at like, all right, how can I start to open to let this energy move? So as we begin, Lisa from Kauai, Rachel from UK, Lori from Mid-Hudson Valley. Hello, Bridget from Maryland. All right, you guys, thank you guys all for being here. So I wanted Tyler to just start off with what was your experience with depression? I know it was years back and you were like doing your job kind of in the straight and narrow and then like really had a huge awakening. Will you just start wherever you want to start with that and what that process was like and how you began to open to it as a message, as a gift, and how did you do that and what happened when you did?
So I dealt with depression for most of my life. I mean, starting early teens, if not sooner than that. So it just kind of followed me throughout my life. And I reached a point. I was building houses, then I was doing appliance repair work, and I was miserable. I was probably the angriest guy you'd ever worked with. I didn't enjoy any day, any time. Like, it was just a struggle to get through life. And that continued and continued. And I got to a point where I was like, I can't live this way. I can't do this. Either I'm done or I got to find a way to change. So at that point, I had a really young daughter. So went the I got to find a way to change route. Started doing traditional therapy, which was fine. Didn't get a whole lot out of that. And along the way, my mom was diagnosed with a glioblastoma, a brain tumor, and that rocked everything once again. And so I started looking at other options, like what can I do? Just thirsting for something else in life because I felt so disconnected from what everybody else was going through. And I started listening to some self-help podcasts, and in the course of that, I heard one that just blew everything wide open. It's one of those spontaneous awakening type moments. It was actually they're interviewing Laura Lynn Jackson. She's like one of the most medical or scientifically studied mediums in the world. And there was this part of me. My mom was way into holistic health and homeopathy and everything growing up, so I was very open to alternative stuff. But this really just blew it open, and I was like, okay, what else is out there? It sent me down this path where I went from doing construction work every day to now doing healing work, and just complete 180 in my life.
Was there a point where I know you said you felt like, should I end it? But I had this daughter, so I'm like, I got to sort myself out. Did you feel like suicidal, or did you have those kind of thoughts at some point?
Oh, 100%. Oh yeah, I probably had almost daily suicidal thoughts for 5 or 6 years. Just something I battled every single day.
And did you go on medication,
it got to a point where I couldn't live that way.
Did you use medication?
I did at one point in college. I was on medication for a couple months, and then again, it was just one of those things that helped a little bit, but never felt like it helped enough to really keep doing it.
And so what then happened? You had this opening, you're looking at new perspectives, you had some awareness, there's more to the picture than maybe what you were thinking this was about. And how did you begin to let things unwind?
I had a thirst for knowledge. I had a thirst for something deeper, that there had to be more to life than what was going on. And I think so many people are dealing with that right now, especially a lot of my clients. It's just this place where you're like, I get up every day, I go do the same thing every week, and I'm miserable. Like, this just doesn't feel like, what are we doing here? Why are we working 9 to 5 every single day? Like, none of this makes sense. And meditation was a thing I found that really helped. I would do daily meditations. I started with doing the tapping that you're so big in, which I love. Tapping is amazing. And it was just, I started doing things to take care of myself. I started putting myself first, which was completely different. And prior to that, I was borderline alcoholic, if not full-blown alcoholic at one point. It was something that gave me freedom, got me away from thinking about my life, what was going on in my head. And so just, I had to take a step. I had to do something. And that's when I realized there's so much more to life than what was going on. And the disconnect I was feeling was that I was in a path that didn't serve me. It wasn't anything fulfilling. It was just, I was told this is what life is supposed to be. You get up in the morning, you go to a job, you come home, you eat dinner, you sit in front of the TV, and you go to bed. Then you wake up and you do it again. And that just doesn't make sense.
So here you were in that space feeling like the deadness of buying into the idea like, well, I guess this is what you're supposed to do. And you feel, people are asking, what is depression? Because is this what I'm having here? It's when your life really feels void of joy and void of any purpose or meaning for why am I experiencing it this way? And it's a little bit of a broad definition. There's not one way to look at this. And we'll talk a little bit about despair and like what the difference is. But how did you, so it sounds like you kind of like began to open to higher possibilities by just holding space for the idea that maybe I'm wrong about the this is just how I'm supposed to make it work idea. Maybe I'm wrong about like, this is all there is and I should just be happy with it idea. And then that kind of allowed you to begin to see possibilities and take a different path.
Yeah, exactly. It was, just, this doesn't make sense. I'm miserable. I mean, like I said, I was so angry. I was so miserable. I was, I couldn't believe people actually wanted to be around me unless I was drinking, and then I was a good time, I guess. But outside of that, I was just, I was awful to be around. I didn't want to be around myself. And it's just, there had to be something else. Like, it doesn't make sense to be in this world and that be the reality, that you're just miserable.
And then were you first surprised? Like, because now you're doing something way, way more expansive with like being intuitive, being a healer, reading people, helping them, resolve all kinds of illness or depression for themselves. Did that start to spark in of like, wait, maybe I could go this way? Like, how did it come about that there was another path you could start to explore?
I mean, it was all like I used to say, I became this by accident. Like I literally just started looking at options. At the very end of the talk therapy I was doing, we did some EMDR, and that seemed to help some. And I got very interested in that and started doing some research, just like what's the actual science behind this? I mean, I have a very science-oriented brain. So I started looking into that, and that's where EFT came up, and then meditation and all that. So I started to really, really step into that area, just in terms of helping myself. That's all I was interested in, is just finding some way. All I wanted to do was be happy. Like, how could I
This is like
possibly be
99%
happy?
of the practitioners and doctors I've met who've kind of started doing things differently. Almost every single one of them had their own sort of crisis that had them then,
Right.
by necessity for themselves, begin to explore other options of like, wait a minute, what am I going to do? And then that led to them establishing a whole new field of medicine. And, I think it's a little interesting that maybe are we not that on board to do it, to explore those things for others? Like, we kind of buy into the model we're given and we keep applying this to everyone else. And then when it comes to actually experiencing how not enough that really is, and like not acceptable that really is, when we have our own breakdown, which sure the heck does open us really quickly to begin to look at a more authentic option.
Right, exactly. And that's something I deal with all my clients. Is so many of them are in a job or relationship or just some aspect of their life that just they're miserable with, but they're comfortable in that miserable space. They don't know what to do. They don't know what's, the world's big and scary, and this is awful, but I know this. It's a known quantity. And it takes courage. It takes something deeper, something bigger, to take that step out and look at something else, look at other options that are out there. But the second you crack that door open and you start to see that there is more to life, there is something else out there, it's amazing how quickly and magnetically you get pulled into other areas. I mean, from when I started doing this, started working on myself for real, to when I was actually opening my own practice and doing this work, was only a matter of a few years. And it was such a smooth, easy transition to get there. Like, doors just kept opening up as I kept stepping into it. And that's what you find. As soon as you take that step, whatever it is that scares you the most, you take that step into it, the world changes. Things just start to open up for you. It's amazing.
So Wendy is saying, I've been crying almost daily and have interpreted this as a depression. If crying is energy moving, is depression incorrect for how I've been feeling? Is despair the same thing as depression? And then Sarah said, I have a similar question. I've been crying and labeling it as discharge and release, but now I'm starting to be concerned about how long it's been going on with no lightning or a positive change. I want to let you speak to that.
Okay. So what can happen, though, it can start off as a release. Crying is a big release. These emotions are coming up. You start releasing, you start moving into it. But because you've been living in this despair, you've been living in these energies for so long, it's very easy for your system to still attach to them. And So you continue to generate more despair, more of that, because you're familiar with it, and it just keeps going and keeps crying. So what would work best at this is bringing in a new energy. You got to bring in whatever it is you want. Meditation is a great way to bring up, okay, I want to feel a certain way. I've felt this before sometime in the past. I'm going to just practice feeling this. There you go. Feel that shift. So you start bringing this or energy in. So when you have this despair and you're crying, you can be like, you know what? Okay, if this is going to release, it's going to release now. If not, then I'm just continuing this pattern. Let's step into this new energy. Let's decide at this moment that I'm going to try something different and try it. And it'll take practice. 9 times out of 10, you're going to fail that first couple weeks. But if you stick with it, if you keep opening that door and you keep stepping into it, your body naturally wants to be happy. We don't want to be miserable people. You naturally want to be in a state of support, love, and happiness. And as long as you keep nurturing that, you do find some action, find something you can do, something simple. This is one of the big things I push, is finding 20 minutes every day that you do one thing for yourself. One of the biggest, most supporting things that happened for me in my life is about 1.5 years ago, I started writing every day. So I write 3 pages every morning. I missed one day in the last 1.5 years. And it's just, I show up for myself every day. I write about what happened. I write about what comes in. It's actually helped me open up my intuition. Because every day I just writing it, whatever's going on in my life, whatever challenges, whatever questions I have, I just write them down on the paper. Information just starts flooding in. And that's, okay. So another aspect of depression that a lot of you are dealing with is that somewhere in your childhood, your experience was, you were told that it was wrong. So it's like, hey, I'm sad right now. And a parent comes in, they see you and they're like, why are you sad? And it's like, well, this toy broke. And you get told, oh, that's nothing to be sad about. And you start to question yourself. And then you start to doubt what you feel inside, what you're experiencing. And you create this disconnect between your inner voice, your intuition, and what's going on in the world, which then you start to go down this path of, okay, now you have to get the job, you have to get married, you have to have the 2.5 kids, a dog, you have to live this certain life where your inner guidance is telling you, no, my passion is this way. I want to be doing this. And as soon as you start to listen into that voice again, you open that door to start listening into that intuition about what's going on in your life, what you really feel passionate about and excited about. That's when everything really starts to accelerate, is allowing that intuition, and anything you can do to continue to nurture that: journaling, meditation, even tapping, so many options.
I a lot of times when I want to bring in a new energy, will do a gratitude practice, and I'll be like, Kim, give me 20 grats right now. And a lot of times, like, I really, really, if it's like putting ice cream on top of poop and you're like, oh, it's so heavy to even try to get myself there, then that's when I'll just feel everything that's there. I'll actually let the idea of doing the exercise bring up the heaviness that feels so overwhelming, and just go even more fully into witnessing and allowing what's there. And what I found is that allowing the despair or the grief or the hopelessness is already a higher frequency than suppressing, repressing, trying to overcome the despair, grief, and hopelessness. And that the question that was asked, is depression the same as despair? No, depression is suppressed despair. It's suppressed hopelessness. It's the wrongness, like you're saying. So when making yourself wrong, that's going to create that suppression. And so it's the energy stuck, the energy's not moving. And that's kind of that state of depression. And someone just asked, well, what about if it was chemically induced? And she, Robin said, I was prescribed benzodiazepines for sleep. That was actually a lifestyle problem. And can this heal depression, even if it's from having tapered off the benzodiazepines? And, my answer is 100% yes. And we've seen in psychoneuroimmunology, it's the exact same patterning in the brain, in the nervous system, in the receptors and the hormones. And this is the same way to repattern that. So, I got a little feedback there. So if I go to like my gratitude practice, and so then when I do embrace like what's there, it's this exact same density that's there, but now it's like 2% lighter. I'll welcome it. I'll welcome all the ways I want it to change. And I'll welcome all the ways I've identified with it, which is like a good little practice, like welcome everything I'm making this mean. Welcome all the ways I have to have this change. It has to go away. And then welcome everywhere I'm making this mean. It's who I am. And then I allow like a little bit of lightning there. And then, I can do my gratitude practice and bring in a new energy and start to percolate in a higher energy from there.
Yeah,
and Marie,
that's one.
How did EMDR help? If you want to speak to that a little bit.
EMDR, God, this is so long ago. It helped. It just so much of my trauma, like I didn't experience much, the big T, the major traumas in my life. It was more just those small traumas. But what I've learned from all that is your body doesn't know the difference. So if you only experience so much, the highest trauma you experienced is a 10. So whether it was just some verbal criticism versus physical abuse, two different people, there's no difference between it. A 10 is a 10, and that's how your body deals with it. So I had, had stuff throughout my childhood that just seemed to be hanging on, and talking about it, anything else I tried wasn't working. And the EMDR I found really interesting because it just started breaking up those energies.
And what is EMDR?
Yeah,
sorry, we didn't exactly introduce that.
EMDR, I don't even remember what it stands for. Electromagnetic.
Yeah, I think it's
I don't even remember.
eye movement desensitization.
Yeah.
Release. Eye movement desensitization.
Yeah, we did it.
It's reprocessing. Eye movement desensitization.
Okay, we did it.
Reprocessing.
Okay, we did it with electric. They're vibrating paddles. I held one in each hand, and they just alternated how they were vibrating. And it triggers both hemispheres of your brain, which allows your whole body to process, your whole mind to process what happens. Because in a trauma, we experience it with one hemisphere of our brain. So you either experience and get hung up on the emotional side, or you get hung up on the logic, the visual cues, everything that came in. And when you can complete those, when you can get both hemispheres of the brain to process and understand what happened, then a lot of the energy releases, and you lose the trauma aspect of it.
Yeah, and it's going to be limited in some way. It's really helpful, but the biggest piece is what I found, and what Tyler and I are both finding, is like, will I continue to go into greater willingness to meet the densities that are here? Meaning you're only going to get so far. Like I've only gotten so far by trying to change them, trying to shift them, trying to, like medicate in some way and overcome them and make them go away. And then there comes a moment where it's like me and me in the total hopelessness of this part of me that still believes there's no possibility. I am separate. I am limited. I'm not going anywhere, and I've told people in the Mind-Body Solution for anxiety and depression, like lots of exercises for this, but one of them is that you like swamp it all out. What does that little 2% part of you have to say? Because people will say to me like, you're so positive. You're always so happy. And I'm like, oh my God, no. There's this part, it might just be 2% part, but this part that has something very different to say. And if I just keep trying to like stay busy enough to not meet that, it's going to be limited. If I just trying to like do more gratitudes enough and I really don't meet that, what am I doing? Right. So it's like you put ice cream on top of poop, or be positive isn't actually creating wholeness. So for me, there is a place where all the like self-healing or whatever in the world can't create the shift that you can create when you're 2% more willing to meet what's arising. And for me, finding purpose and meaning is a really helpful way to do it. So how I will do it, and you can share how you do it, Tyler. I remember that my body is a transmitter. I remember my body is a giant receptor, that I am actually tapping into the collective. I am not alone. I remember that every little teensy mini shift that I make in the willingness to meet the density with love and compassion for this part of me, known and unknown, is a collective shift. Everyone feels everywhere that really does make a difference. And that always gives me like a little extra willingness to show up to stuff like people are saying, like for this month, like I'm just crying and crying. It's just this endless thing. What is going on? Why is this happening? And it won't have any meaning unless you kind of give it some meaning. And you'll feel that lightens everything up so much. And I always tell people, like, when there's lightness, that's truth. When there's heaviness, that's the lie. Like someone's told, well, you have this trauma and so you'll never heal. Or, oh, you had that fall and your back's always going to have, you're always going to have problems. You're never going to be whole. And then you're like, oh, so you have to look like truth, lie. My body's a healing machine and it's going to register this. And so you either like, let that in or you keep blocking it out. So for me, I do that. It always feels like a million times lighter when I remember I'm part of a whole. Every little bit of willingness I find to meet the densities, even though I don't know why they're coming up. I don't understand what the F is going on. Why am I feeling like this? And I release needing to know why. It will give me a little more presence in it. And the energy really starts to move.
I mean, we were talking about despair earlier and looking at that, like a lot of times, so you feel that deep despair and it's actually, you create despair that you're still feeling despair, and which just causes it to grow. And another way to approach it's what I actually did earlier today. Presenting, doing these kind of talks is not in my comfort zone. I mean, I definitely had a lot of anxiety coming into this, and before we started this, I'm going to do a meditation, and I welcomed that energy. I welcomed all that anxiety, all, doing presentations in high school, all of that stuff, just welcomed it. It filled my entire body, and then it was gone. It just dissipates. And that's something that happens with these energies as we continue to grow them, and, we feel more despair, and they turn into these monsters that are just bigger than what they really are. And they're actually, we think they're bigger. They're not actually any bigger. And if you really truly just allow that energy in, just allow it to wash over you and fill you, you realize it doesn't have any power, that those dense energies really don't have anything on you, and the whole thing dissipates and breaks up. But it's our resistance. That's where the depression, that's where the anxiety, it's our resistance to feeling these quote unquote negative emotions that causes them to grow and causes them to become these bigger things than what they are.
Yeah, Julie's asking, how do you release needing to know? And I always, you just have to welcome the one who needs to know. Love the one who needs to know. Because there's also like the one who's like, I'm never letting go, no matter what. And then you're like, oh no, it's impossible. So sometimes I'm like, I welcome this one who will never let go, who's adamantly holding, who's just going to hold on tension and clamp down in fear, no matter what happens, because these are just, our nature is love. And these are aspects, that's what they need from you.
Right. And that's just that separation. It's just that not trusting in your intuition, trusting what you're experiencing. And instead, I have to know the answers to this. I have to know. And then you're throwing out the energy of, I don't know anything. So you create that as opposed to just trusting in yourself, doing whatever you can, small thing, build that self-trust.
Yeah. And you don't need to know any of it. There isn't anything you're going to need to know. That being that created you, like, has it covered. But then there can be like a hit, like ding, 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 go this way. And I would like you to talk about that with, like, you said, doors open and I created what I'm doing now, in that way. It's like, well, you did need to know, but it wasn't from the mind, ego, knowing, control. It was from like inspiration and like synchronicity. So will you just speak a little bit about what that process was like and you've created a whole new life now?
I mean, it's far from seamless. It's not a linear growth pattern, I'll tell you that. It's been a lot of ups and downs and a lot of challenges along the way. But the second I started tuning in, I started realizing I always knew these things. I always knew what was going on. I learned how clairvoyant I was. I had no idea. I have a steady stream of images going on in my head that I just assumed everybody did. I had no idea that that was something outside of, normal people's, or just,
Yeah. Most
not
people
everybody
don't
experiences
function that way at all.
No, and that's like somebody starts talking and telling me a story, and I see the whole story in my head. It just comes in. So soon as I started trusting in my intuition, I realized how much I could read other people, read situations, and how much I was already tuned into this, but I didn't realize it was happening outside of me, especially emotional. I'm very, very strong empath, so I would be in a group of people, and I could feel every emotion, every thought, everything going on, and I didn't know that that was coming outside. I assumed it was me. So, a lot of people in social situations are very self-conscious and insecure. Is what I've learned. And so I became more and more of that. And as I've started to open up and trust my intuition, I'm able to differentiate those beliefs, thoughts, and all those energies, and really feel what's going on outside of me, and not make it all about me at the same time.
Yeah. Sarah said, I feel like depression is different from emotion. It just feels heavy, and I feel like you have no choice but to lay there and feel it. Feels more like a shutdown than something like anger or grief or whatever. Yeah, and what I've shared is like depression is the suppression of emotion, the repression of emotion, making it wrong, making what you're feeling wrong or who you're being wrong.
Right, and that comes right back to that self-trust and that intuition of just getting past that stage where you're just emotionally numb, where you allow little bits of emotion to come through. You don't let it all wash over you at once. I mean, if you can do that, that's amazing, and you'll see the biggest growth in your life. But when you cry, when you shed tears, allow to move, allow yourself to feel, and that's that big disconnect you're having right there, is the numb to feeling. And a lot of times, I mean, that's bipolar, when you're back and forth between the two. You feel too much and then you're shut down, and then you feel too much, you're shut down. Finding a way, finding some practice where you can just allow a little bit out at a time, you'll start to pick yourself back up. You'll start dropping some of that density. Working with somebody who does, either energy practitioner or a therapist or something, is a great way to start opening that door, to start letting some of that emotion out.
Well, and I'm going to share your link. And I want to share also, what have you seen with practicing with individuals referent to this, or like other really incredible things that you've seen happen, especially when people thought like, oh no, this is not possible for me?
I've worked with actually several Vietnam veterans that were dealing with severe PTSD, and having flashbacks, having just all sorts of issues because of that. And so part of the gifts that I discovered throughout this whole journey, which we can go into if you want to, was that my body was geared to process dense energies. It's a gift I was born with, and it's something I've discovered along the way. So when I'm working with somebody one-on-one, we just set the intention that they can release whatever, and it comes to me and it's gone. My body just processes and sends love back to you. It's phenomenal.
Which is amazing, because I know a lot of times you'll be like, oh, I've tuned into you, and I'm like, oh my God. And then I feel so much lighter, and now I know what was going on. And it's, because we're connected and we're not operating in separation here, it's really incredible that you have that ability, because I think that sometimes, and it's not like you're doing something for someone that you're taking it away. It's like, I've got to be on some level willing to let it go and give it up. If someone is married, to hold that, like you're not interfering with their system. So that's important
No,
to
I
understand.
can't.
You're like facilitating
Yeah.
something that they are in the process of allowing.
Yeah. I usually only do it when I'm one-on-one with somebody. I'll be on the phone with you and be like, all right, just release this, send it to me, and we clear stuff up really quickly. But I've done this with I don't even know how many people, but the transition they go through in one session, and it is phenomenal, especially that first one. It is, I mean, they
Well,
just,
because
all
that
that
lets you
density, all
see
that stuff that's
something,
dragging down.
and you can see things that you maybe couldn't see before, have awareness or feel like a lightness you haven't felt before. And it's, for me, like knowing that I am in a process and then feeling you see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's so obvious. You're like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. I'm all on board. And then there's no longer the stuckness, and the energy can move. Rachel is saying, I think there's a lot when you say that what we expect life to be, we expect life to be a certain way, and we take an expected path. I've struggled with how my life has not turned out as I planned. I didn't expect to be ill for so many years, and I only have a better quality of life now in my 40s. I feel the sadness for how things have gone and the time that passed, but I recognize this resistance to what is. Pretty well said.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just letting that grief be there. I mean, just allowing that grief to exist. Yeah, you did miss out on part of your life. So, I mean, this was all part of your path to get you to this space where now you can expand, but that doesn't invalidate the grief you feel. So allow that to be there, experience that, allow that to flow, allow that to move, cry. Like it's valid. It is part of it. And the second you start to acknowledge that and just be in that energy, it starts to dissipate, and then you can really look towards where you are with so much more gratitude.
And Patrick is saying, my depression is causing me to faint more. Yet this suppression will powerfully impact the autonomic nervous system, changes the way your autonomic nervous system functions. That's like heart rate, blood pressure, breathing. And so it's your body's really letting you know, like, I can't take this suppression anymore. Will you stop making it wrong and let some of these energies move? Like Nadine saying, how can we welcome some of the painful thoughts? So let's kind of speak to that.
It's baby steps. It's cracking that door open. So many of us, we have all this stuff from our childhood and earlier in our life, and we've shut the door, put 15 locks on it, a couple guard dogs. We're not going there. Like that energy is so repressed, and we just drag that stuff around. It's so dense, it's so heavy, and that's where disease, illness, all these pain come from. And if we just crack that door, let a little bit out, shut the door, like that's perfectly fine. And it's just a matter of just allowing. I mean, anytime you're okay. Another way to look at this is most of us, if you've dealt with depression, anxiety, your self-talk is not the most positive thing in the world. And you have these thoughts that just repeat on loop about who you are, how you feel about yourself, and all of that. And the second you tune into those and you question those, there you go. You start to break them down. You start to see them. I mean, it's fear. It's false thoughts. They're not true to who you really are. And the second you question them, they fall apart. There's nothing there. But as you continue to run from it and continue to just self-medicate, whatever you do, distract, social media, whatever it is that you're doing to avoid those thoughts, they'll continue to grow and continue to ruin your life. But if you can just, I mean, I tell everybody, like, especially what's going on right now in the world, put your phone down, get rid of your social media for a day, go out in nature, go walk around, be with yourself for a little bit. You're going to cry. You're going to probably have to sit down for a bit. But you'll move that energy and you'll see that this stuff is not as big. It's not as overwhelming, and it will not destroy you like you've come to believe.
That's a powerful thing too, like to begin to just look at the thought and look at the idea and feel everything that goes along with it. And then just ask, is this true? And what if the opposite were true? You know, like a Byron Katie little turnaround. What if the opposite were true?
Exactly.
And then begin to let yourself feel the energies of that, because your body won't lie. And it's really all the ways we like suppress it. Like you're saying, shut the door. I'm not going to look there. How do I feel better? How do I feel better? When actually what is a higher frequency is that the surrender and allowing. And for me, I always just start with like soften my body and breathe a little more fully, because then there's more life, there's more breath, there's more movement, even just physically. And this will allow, you know, a lot more of movement energetically.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, lost my train of thought.
We have a little gap too. So I don't know if that's happening on your end. Like, do you have that gap?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, you've cut out.
Well, I want to bring up Sarah's question, because I think this is one that maybe a lot of people would resonate with. What do I do when I have the knowledge and the capacity to allow the emotion, and I feel like I have been feeling the emotion? But this is like, you know, and Tyler and I talk about this stuff all the time, because like we'll have so much intensity coming up that it's like, oh my God, I'm at my wit's end. I've met my absolute moment. Like I don't understand. And we always kind of like invite each other to a greater expansion than what we thought we signed up for, to a greater expansion that has space even for this. And it keeps letting more and more and more and more and more density move through. And I have seen in my life that always equates to more abundance showing up in my life. And when you're in that moment, you don't see that. You're like, no. Now this time, this is just too much to ask of me. I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. And so sometimes you need, and I think that's great that you do sessions to like really get in this energy with people. But sometimes you need to let that higher vantage point in that you don't even know on some level. She said, I flip into depression, which happens after a big stress, a big event. There's a death in the family. It let me cry and shake. Oh, and she said probably more than what's normal for someone who's somewhat removed from the situation, but it's actually normal. It's way more normal to express grief than it is to freaking suppress it. It's just way more commonplace to suppress it. And so you don't see everyone else in the room shaking hysterically. You see them like, I'm good. I'm just going to work a lot and distract myself. And even though you're like, I'm not that close to this person who died, death is death. And it will shake you to your core, because we all know it's going to happen. And this is like one of the greatest fears we hold and suppress. So you're probably the healthiest person in that room.
Well, and when it comes to expressing emotions, there's no normal. We're all unique beings with unique experiences, unique perspectives. And as a result, we all experience these emotions differently. Some people are going to grieve longer than others. Some people are able to clear it quickly. You know, it all depends on what your path is and how you came here to experience life. And there's also layers to everything. Kim and I have dealt with this a ton lately. It's like, oh no, I cleared all this out a year ago. Like, I don't need to deal with this anymore. And it's just come up in a bigger way to teach me even more in a completely different way. So by saying, oh, I've grieved enough, you know, why is this still coming up? You're creating resistance to that emotion, as opposed to going, okay, there's still something here that I'm trying to learn. There's still something here for me to teach, you know, this is trying to teach me. And if I allow space for that, and if I just allow myself to be in that just a bit longer without that resistance, without that, why am I still here? Those answers, those lessons will just come so clear, come so quickly, and the energies dissipate.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing for Sarah, where she's like, okay, why am I having this massive meltdown? When we make it wrong that we're empathic, that we're feeling so much, that we're expressing so much, it creates a very different outcome in the system. If you start making it right, like, wow, I'm healing the whole room. Wow, I'm giving these people the example of what healthy grief expression really looks like. When you start actually celebrating yourself for how your system works, you're going to see a big change in what you notice happening, where you're like, I'm feeling stuff, but then there's like this mega tidal wave. You'll begin to see your system manage things so much more beautifully and so much more fluidly, even though there are big energies. When you begin to celebrate yourself for this, how easy is it to make ourselves wrong, right?
Right. Well, and also as being an empath, you tend not to have, unless you're very aware and you've worked through it a lot, your boundaries might not be as strong, and you're actually taking on some of the grief and the emotions of those around you, of your family members, of everybody in the room. So you're processing that for them at the same time. You're not just processing your own, which, you know, you feel like you're helping other people. And this is definitely a learned behavior that so many of us have from our childhood, where we learn to feel into, you know, especially if you had emotionally volatile parents, you learn to feel into everybody's emotions and kind of, you know, mold yourself to fit into, you know, keeping the peace and keeping everybody happy and stable. So as you grow older, you just step into that space and you're taking on these emotions that aren't necessarily yours or yours to process, but it's just second nature and something you do very, very easily. So look at boundaries and look at establishing boundaries between yourself and your family, and allow them to grieve and space to do it so they can process and get through it, and not just continue to process for everybody else around you.
Sorry, and Patrick is saying, I don't know what's been happening at your practice, but that would be an interesting thing. Hold on a sec. Oh, good. People are really resonating with this, Tyler. This is awesome. Yes, I can feel other people's grief and emotions, and always checking how others are, not my emotions to process. Yeah, and one great way is just like return to sender, give everyone their energy back.
Right.
Oh, I heard what you said, Patrick.
What about that's something?
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, I mean, a practice, you know, to do every night is to cut ties, release any energy. I do this with my daughter every night when we get in bed, and it's not yours. Send it back. Let it go. Release it, and then pull back all your energy you've left it throughout the day, because we leave energy everywhere with every person we come in contact with. Pull back. You'll fall asleep 10 times faster than you do now.
Oh, that's a great practice. I'm going to do that with Gemma.
Yeah, definitely.
It's always good to have like ideas about stuff. All right, I think we're going to finish. But first, I'm going to share the link for where you can find Tyler and more about his work. Or if you would like to have a session with him, he does do private one-on-one sessions, which I think is something a lot of people in my community have been asking for. We've got Jess and Alicia working with people and individuals, and it's been amazing. I'm not really doing much of that anymore. There are only a few people I'm working with at a time. So I'm always really excited to find like practitioners who are awesome and that I really would like recommend and stay behind and, you know, and go to for myself. So I have shared the link. It's empoweredjourney.net, empoweredjourney.net. So just where you can, you know, plug in with what he's doing and possibly work with Tyler. Oh, Christina, just knowing that someone like Tyler exists in our world lifts my spirits. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Christina. Appreciate it. And I'm gonna have some group work coming up here soon. Small groups dealing with depression, anxiety, and trauma and PTSD soon. So give me a couple weeks to get that all established, and that'll be on the website.
Oh, that's great. And can they subscribe now to stay tuned for that, or is there a way to? Yeah, looks like on your.
Yeah, but there will be in the next week.
Well, there's a contact form on the bottom too. If they go to enter their info on that contact form, if they're interested in being a part of that group, then you'll have that.
That'd be perfect. Yep. Yeah. Leave your information there, and I will definitely let you know when that happens.
Yes. Does he have a Facebook group or page?
Yes,
you will. Yep. Oh, you do have a page, and that's Empowered
Yep.
Journey?
Under the same name, Empowered Journey.
Okay, cool. So you can find him in Facebook and Instagram, right?
Yes.
Empowered Journey?
Yep.
Oh, I
Yes.
didn't tune into you on Instagram, so I'm gonna have to do that right now because I would love to connect. And we will do an Instagram live later on, like within the next week, to do some actual clearing. And then the other thing, if people are experiencing anxiety and depression, there's still the opportunity to sign up for the MindBody solution for anxiety. And Tyler's going to do a bonus call in there where we'll do a clearing and do some like integrative work. If you'd like to come to that call, we're going to add that in as a bonus call in the MindBody solution for anxiety and depression. And that's at drkimd.com/anxiety. If you resonate with that, there's information on the page, so you can like check that out and feel it out. We do have 2 live calls left. The other ones, of course, have been recorded, so you'll have them. They were very, very rich. And we did really release a lot of densities. So, and I know with what we're doing with Tyler, it will add immensely to that program. So you who are in that program can stay tuned for that. And if you'd like to come into that group and register, I have just shared the link for that program as well. Do you have any little piece you want to leave people with as we complete?
Just be kind, be compassionate. Just give yourself that extra bit of grace. I mean, when you're in that space of deep depression and you just feel like there's nothing else, allow yourself to be in that space. Just open up, like, okay, this is what my body's calling for and this is where I need to be, and that's fine. Let go of everybody else's expectations and what you think you should be doing, and just be in that moment, be in that space, and just allow your body to heal.
Thank you. All right. And Cindy, I posted the link, or maybe you just have to enter it into your browser separately, empoweredjourney.net. It should be working just fine. Valuable webinar. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you guys all for being here live. And lots of love to everyone who's listening to the recording or the podcast. We'll be here every week with MindBody TV at 11 a.m. Mountain Time in Facebook in the MindBody community, which is our group, or on YouTube at Dr. Kim Duramo. And we will keep going with awesome resources to stay connected going forward.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you all.